Hello, everyone. Welcome to Blue Glass, the place where we look at life, human nature, and the invisible dynamics we leave behind, discussing them as clearly and transparently as looking through a clean pane of glass. I am your host. Today, we are putting a somewhat frustrating but deeply relatable question on the table, one that we all know instinctively and that keeps us tossing and turning at night. Why? Why is it that in society, truly principled, intelligent, honest, and moral people often quietly remain at the lower levels, while ambitious, selfish, every man for himself profiles climb to the very top of the social pyramid at rocket speed? Let's be honest, you've experienced this at least once. You've seen your hardest working, most honest colleague at work practically stand still in their career, while that other person, the one who never leaves the manager's office and constantly cuts corners, gets the promotion. It seems like this rule plays out in school, in social circles, and sometimes even within families. Is the system truly broken, or are we just playing the game wrong? Lean back, take a sip of your coffee, and let's dissect the anatomy of this bitter reality today. Part 1: The Dark Forces. At the top of the pyramid first, let's look at the harsh reality. Why do these negative competitors rise to the top? This phenomenon has very clear explanations in both psychology and sociology, my friends. 1. The Dark Triad. Advantage. There is a well-known term in psychology, the Dark Triad. It consists of narcissism, Machiavellianism, and psychopathy. People who climb to the upper echelons of society often possess these three traits slightly more than the average person. Why? Because to a Machiavellian person, the end justifies the means. An intelligent and moral person feels ashamed to step on someone else's toes to get ahead. It keeps them up at night. For dark triad profiles, however, other people are merely stepping stones. Because they free themselves from the burden of guilt, they navigate the corners of life much faster. 2. The invisibility of honesty. Principled and intelligent people are usually modest. They don't run around shouting, "Look what I did, I'm amazing." They simply do their jobs to the absolute best of their ability and wait for someone to notice. Unfortunately, the modern world belongs to those who speak the loudest and market themselves aggressively, even if they are completely empty inside. While a moral person is busy overthinking, "Am I overstepping my boundaries?" the other has already stolen the spotlight. 3. Flexibility versus rigid principles. Intelligent and moral people have red lines and strict principles. They tell themselves, "If I do this, I'll lose my self-respect." These very principles often become a heavy anchor when trying to climb the social pyramid. On the other side, you have spineless profiles who change shape depending on the situation and bow down to whoever holds the power. Because they bend whichever way the wind blows, they don't break in a storm. Instead, they get carried right to the top. Case studies. Real-world examples of the grim climb. My friends, to better understand what I mean, let's look at history and the business world together. These aren't just theoretical psychological concepts. They are real stories lived out on the world stage. 1. Elizabeth Holmes and the Theranos Scandal, Self-Marketing and Illusion. Our first example comes from the recent history of Silicon Valley. A young woman named Elizabeth Holmes claimed she had developed a revolutionary technology capable of detecting hundreds of diseases from just a single drop of blood. In reality, there was no working technology and absolutely no scientific breakthrough. The company was completely hollow. Yet, with her signature black turtlenecks, artificially deepened voice, and immense manipulation skills, the ultimate display of narcissistic self-marketing, Holmes managed to sway some of America's most prominent statesmen and billionaires. The company's valuation skyrocketed to $9 billion, seating her at the absolute apex of the pyramid. When the truth finally came out, the whole empire was revealed to be a massive lie. This is a prime example of how, in a world where honest people stay silent out of humility, empty vessels can reach the top purely by shouting and manipulating. 2. Thomas Edison versus Nikola Tesla, character versus Machiavellianism. On one side, we have Nikola Tesla, a man who focused entirely on science with pure genius and morality. On the other stands Thomas Edison, a master of marketing and an aggressive businessman. Tesla was a selfless, moral scientist who dreamed of providing free wireless electricity to all of humanity. Edison, conversely, embodied the Machiavellian belief that the end justifies the means. Part 2. The other side of the coin, the counter thesis. Now, everything we've talked about so far sounds incredibly pessimistic, doesn't it? I can almost hear you asking, well, should we all just become bad people then? Hold on, let's take a breath. Here at Blue Glass, we don't look at things through a single narrow lens. Let's pull back the camera and look at the counter thesis, the other side of the coin. Are the honest and intelligent truly losing, or is our definition of success just fundamentally skewed? 1. The loneliness and transience of the peak. Yes, manipulative or amoral individuals can sprint to the top, but staying there and actually enjoying the view is a completely different story. Any empire built on a foundation of deceit and mistrust is mathematically destined to collapse. The toxic profiles you see at the peak live deeply paranoid lives. They are forced to constantly watch their backs, can never truly trust anyone, and rarely have a single genuine friend. Those who rise the fastest are almost always the ones who suffer the most violent falls. 2. True power, sustainability, and respect. Intelligent, moral, and principled people might not always sit in those artificial, flashing chairs under the bright spotlights of the pyramid's peak, but they are the load-bearing pillars of society. When a crisis hits and the world feels like it's crashing down, nobody looks to those superficial showman leaders for answers. Instead, everyone knocks on the door of the honest, calm, and wise individual. Is real success just a job title or a balance in a bank account? Or is it the profound peace of mind you feel when your head hits the pillow at night, knowing you have the genuine respect of the people around you? 3. Redefining the concept of status. Perhaps the reason moral and intelligent people remain at lower levels is simply because they refuse to play the muddy game required to reach the top. In other words, this isn't a failure. It is a conscious, deliberate choice. An intelligent person sees the toxic politics, the immense stress, and the erosion of character waiting at the top of the pyramid and says, "No, thank you. My own small, peaceful, and high-quality world is more than enough for me." They haven't been left behind. They have actively opted out of the chaos. Part 3. Carving your own path. Dear friends of Blue Glass, the takeaway from this narrative is neither an angry rebellion nor a submissive surrender. If you ever feel like you've been pushed out of the system or that you aren't where you deserve to be just because you refuse to compromise your character, remember this: you are not doing anything wrong. You are just witnessing a temporary illusion. Human history is ultimately defined not by those who grabbed power through deceit, but by those who left a permanent mark through the strength of their character. What matters isn't which floor of the pyramid you occupy. It's how straight you stand and how true you remain to yourself wherever you are. Never measure your intrinsic worth using the broken, fragile ladders built by others. If you enjoyed this podcast and want to help us, please don't forget to subscribe. Take care of yourselves and never let anyone dim your light or compromise your character. I'll see you in the next podcast. Goodbye for now.